The day Troy stole our son's college fund, I discovered two truths. Betrayal has a particular stillness to it, and my 12-year-old was more dangerous than his father ever imagined. Dad's not as smart as he thinks he is, Drew told me, his fingers already dancing across his laptop keyboard, eyes reflecting lines of code like tiny revenge poems. Just give me time. I'd spent years cataloging books at the library, organizing other people's stories. Now we were writing our own, a tale of digital breadcrumbs, cryptocurrency trails, and a boy who refused to let $83,000 disappear without consequences. Troy fled to Bali thinking he'd escaped. He had no idea the hunt had only just begun. The silence hit me first. As I pushed open our front door, the usual sounds of our home, Drew's video games, Troy's business calls, even the hum of the air conditioner, were absent. Just stillness, thick and unsettling. Drew? Troy. I called out, dropping my library tote on the entryway bench. No answer. I made my way to the kitchen, already feeling a strange tightness in my chest. That's when I saw it, a yellow post-it note stuck to the refrigerator, Troy's hasty scrawl instantly recognizable. Don't wait up. 3 words. Just 3 words, but something about them made my stomach clench. Troy often worked late on his entrepreneurial ventures, but he usually texted, not left cryptic notes. I checked my phone, no messages, no missed calls. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. Hey, it's me. Just got home and saw your note. Give me a call when you get this. I kept my voice casual, masking the unease that was slowly building. The house felt wrong somehow, like the air itself had shifted. I walked through each room, noticing small discrepancies. Troy's favorite jacket missing from the coat rack, his phone charger gone from the nightstand, the bathroom cabinet slightly ajar where his toiletries should be. I was about to call him again when I heard the front door open. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. It wasn't Troy who walked in. It was Drew, my 12-year-old son, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his expression unreadable. Hey, sweetie, I said, trying to sound normal. Where's Dad? Drew looked at me for a long moment, his eyes, so much like his father's, strangely flat. Dad said he's going on a trip with someone, he finally said, his voice quiet. I don't think he's coming back. The words hung in the air between us, impossible, and yet somehow not surprising at all. I felt myself sway slightly, reaching for the counter to steady myself. What do you mean? Did he say where he was going? I asked, fighting to keep my voice level for Drew's sake. Drew shook his head. He picked me up from school. Told me in the car. He paused, looking down at his sneakers. He said to tell you not to worry about him. That you'd understand eventually. I wouldn't understand. Not then, not ever. But what troubled me most was Drew's demeanor. He wasn't crying or upset. He seemed resigned, like he'd been expecting this. Did he say anything else? I pressed gently. Just that I should take care of you. Drew's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion. And that he left us enough to get by. Something in those words triggered an alarm in my head. Enough to get by. The college fund, the account we'd been building for Drew since he was born. Every birthday check, every tax refund, my inheritance from my parents, all of it earmarked for Drew's future. I mumbled something about needing to check something online and rushed to my laptop. My fingers trembled as I typed in the password to our bank's website. 3 clicks later, I was staring at the college fund account. Balance: $0. The room spun around me. $83,000 gone. All of it. The fund we'd nurtured for 12 years, the safety net for our son's future, vanished with the same casual cruelty as that yellow post-it note. Mom, Drew's voice came from behind me. What's wrong? I closed the laptop quickly, but not before he caught a glimpse of the screen. His eyes widened slightly, but then his expression settled back into that unsettling calm. He took it all, didn't he? Drew asked quietly. I couldn't lie to him. Yes. The college fund is empty. Drew nodded slowly. I thought he might. You what? Why would you think that? He shrugged, but it wasn't the careless shrug of a typical 12-year-old. It was measured, almost adult. He's been acting weird. Secretive. I heard him on the phone last week talking about liquidating assets and starting fresh. My son shouldn't know what liquidating assets meant. He shouldn't have to. I need to go to the bank, I said, grabbing my purse. Right now. I'll come with you, Drew offered, but I shook my head. No, stay here. In case your father comes back? We both knew he wouldn't. The drive to First National was a blur. I kept checking my phone, half hoping for a text from Troy explaining everything, half dreading what that explanation might be. Nothing came. Mr. Ellison, our usual banker, was with another client, so I ended up across from a young teller named Amber, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as I explained my situation. I'm sorry, Mrs. Walsh, she said, typing something into her computer. But according to our records, the withdrawal was authorized. Mr. Walsh came in person around 2 p.m. today. 2 hours. He'd been here just 2 hours before I came home. But that's our son's college fund, I said, hearing the desperation in my voice. We both set it up. Don't I have any rights to it? Amber's discomfort visibly grew. The account was established with joint access, Mrs. Walsh. Either party can make withdrawals without the other's consent. Did he? I swallowed hard. Did he say anything? Give any reason? I didn't handle the transaction personally, she said apologetically. But I can check the notes. She typed again, then frowned slightly. The only note here is that Mr. Walsh requested the full amount in a cashier's check. He had all the proper identification and authorization codes. Of course he did. Troy had always been meticulous about financial details until he decided to use that meticulousness against us. I drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets of our neighborhood. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw another car parked at the curb, Camille's red Subaru. Camille had been my best friend since college. She'd been my maid of honor at my wedding to Troy, had helped me decorate Drew's nursery, had been there for every major milestone. And now she was here for this one, too. I found her and Drew in the kitchen. She was making mac and cheese, Drew's favorite comfort food, while he sat at the island, picking at a napkin. Amelia, Camille said when she saw me, setting down the wooden spoon and coming around to hug me. She smelled like her signature perfume and pasta sauce. Drew called me. I looked at my son, surprised. He met my gaze steadily. I thought you might need someone else here, he said simply. I nodded, suddenly too exhausted to speak. Camille guided me to a chair, placed a glass of water in front of me, and sat down opposite. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. The empty house, the note, Drew's calm announcement, the drained account. With each detail, Camille's expression grew darker. This was premeditated, she finally said, her voice hard. He didn't just run, he escaped. He's been planning this. But why? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since I'd seen that empty account balance. Why would he do this to Drew? To his own son. Drew, who had been silent throughout my retelling, spoke up. Because of her. Both Camille and I turned to look at him. Her who? I asked, though a sick feeling in my stomach told me I already knew. That Instagram woman. The one Dad's been consulting for. Lana Parker. The fitness influencer Troy had been helping with marketing strategies for the past few months. I'd seen her once. All long legs and perfect teeth, at least 15 years younger than Troy. I'd pushed away the flicker of suspicion then, told myself I was being paranoid. How do you know about her? I asked Drew. Dad left his phone unlocked once, Drew said matter-of-factly. They text a lot. Not about marketing. Camille's hand found mine under the table and squeezed hard. Amelia, I'm so sorry. But I was barely listening. I was already reaching for my phone, opening Instagram with shaking fingers. I found Lana's profile easily. At Fit with Lana, 1.2 million followers, bio reading, living my best life, one perfect moment at a time. Her most recent post, from 3 hours ago, showed a tropical sunset, palm trees silhouetted against a pink-orange sky. The caption read, "New beginnings deserve the best views. Bali leafing free." I zoomed in on the image. There, At the edge of the frame was a hand holding a champagne glass, clinking it against Lana's. On the wrist, partially visible, was a bracelet, a distinctive woven leather band I'd given Troy for our 10th anniversary. "That son of a bitch," Camille breathed, looking over my shoulder. "He's in Bali? With her?" I couldn't speak. The betrayal was too complete, too calculated. He hadn't just abandoned us. He'd robbed his own child's future to fund his escape with a woman young enough to be his daughter. That night, dinner was a silent affair. Camille had insisted on staying, heating up the mac and cheese she'd made earlier, but none of us had much appetite. Drew pushed his food around his plate, occasionally glancing at his laptop screen. He'd been on it since we'd discovered Troy's location, typing furiously, his face illuminated by the blue light. "Drew, honey," I finally said, "maybe you should try to get some sleep. We can figure things out tomorrow." He looked up, his eyes shadowed. "I just need to check a few more things." "What things?" Camille asked gently. "Dad's patterns," Drew replied cryptically. "Do you remember the last 4 digits of his old phone? The one he had before his current one." The question caught me off guard. I think it was 8,974. "Why?" Drew nodded, typing something. "Just checking something." After Camille left, promising to return in the morning, I tried to sleep but couldn't. The bed felt too big, too empty, despite the fact that Troy and I had been sleeping with a wall of tension between us for months. Around midnight, I got up to check on Drew. He was still awake, still at his laptop. "You should sleep," I told him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "I will," he said, not looking up. "Soon." I hesitated, then asked the question that had been haunting me since afternoon. "Did you know that he was planning to leave?" Drew's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Not exactly. But I suspected something was wrong. Why didn't you say anything?" He finally looked up at me, his young face serious in the laptop's glow. "Would you have believed me?" Over him, the question hit me like a physical blow. Would I have? Troy had always been so convincing, so plausible. He could sell sand in a desert, my father used to say. And Drew was just a child, a perceptive, intelligent child, but still. "I don't know," I admitted, and the honesty hurt. Drew nodded, as if my answer confirmed something for him. "Mom, he's not as smart as he thinks he is," he said quietly. "Just give me time." I didn't know what he meant by that, but something in his tone, a certainty beyond his years, made me nod. I couldn't face our bedroom again, so I retreated to the laundry room instead. Sitting on the cold tile floor, surrounded by the ordinary evidence of our life together, Troy's shirts waiting to be washed, Drew's soccer uniform, my library cardigans, I finally broke. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, tearing through me with physical force. I pressed my face against a pile of clean towels to muffle the sound, not wanting Drew to hear. In that moment, I hated Troy with an intensity that frightened me, not just for leaving me, but for stealing from our son, for making me question every memory we'd shared, for forcing Drew to grow up too fast. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually the tears subsided, leaving me hollow and exhausted. When I finally emerged, the house was quiet. Drew had gone to bed, his laptop closed on the kitchen table. Morning arrived with harsh clarity. My eyes were swollen from crying, my head pounding. I found Drew already in the kitchen, making toast and coffee. He'd never made coffee before. "Did you sleep?" I asked, noting the shadows under his eyes. "No," he replied, sliding a mug toward me. "I've been planning this since I saw his burner phone." "His what?" "His second phone. The one he kept in his gym bag." Drew's voice was matter-of-fact. "I found it last month." That's when I knew for sure. I stared at my 12-year-old son, feeling like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. How had he been carrying this knowledge alone? And what did he mean by planning this? "Drew, what exactly are you doing?" I asked carefully. He looked at me steadily, his eyes, Troy's eyes, holding a determination I'd never seen before. "I'm going to get our money back," he said simply. "And make sure he never does this to anyone again." The next few days passed in a blur of practical concerns and emotional aftershocks. I took emergency leave from the library, citing a family crisis. I called our credit card companies, froze joint accounts, and started the painful process of untangling our financial lives. Through it all, Drew remained strangely focused, spending hours at his laptop, occasionally asking me questions about Troy's habits and routines. One morning, a week after Troy's disappearance, Drew called me over to the dining table where he'd set up what he called his command center, his laptop surrounded by notebooks filled with his neat handwriting. "I need to show you something," he said, gesturing for me to sit beside him. What he showed me was a detailed schematic of Troy's digital life, passwords, banking routines, social media patterns, even shopping habits. It was comprehensive, methodical, and frankly disturbing coming from a 12-year-old. "How do you know all this?" I asked, scanning the pages. "I pay attention," Drew said simply. "Dad's not very creative with passwords. He uses variations of your anniversary date, my birthday, and his high school football number." I remembered how Troy would sometimes ask me to log into accounts for him when he was driving or busy. How he'd shout passwords from the shower. How he'd leave his laptop open while going to grab a beer. All those little moments of domestic trust, exploited by our son in ways neither of us could have imagined. "This feels invasive," I said hesitantly. Drew's expression hardened slightly. "More invasive than him stealing my college fund?" I had no answer for that. "Look," Drew continued, pointing to his laptop screen. "I've set up alerts that track transactions on all of Dad's known business aliases." "Business aliases? What are you talking about?" "Dad has at least 3 fake business identities he uses for different ventures," Drew explained. "Jackson Miller for the tech startups, Richard Weston for the real estate stuff, and Stephen Clark for—" I'm not sure what exactly. I felt dizzy. Who is this man I'd been married to for 14 years? And how did my 12-year-old know more about him than I did? Before I could process this, Drew's laptop pinged with an alert. He quickly clicked on a notification. "What is it?" I asked. "Dad just tried to wire $15,000 from one of his business accounts to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands," Drew said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "But the bank flagged it as suspicious." "Should we tell someone?" I asked uncertainly. "The police?" Drew shook his head. "Not yet. We need more evidence first." He paused, then added, "And I want him to feel what we felt." There was something in his voice, a cold determination, that both impressed and troubled me. This wasn't just about recovering the money. For Drew, this was about justice. Later that day, I found Drew using an AI program to recreate Troy's voice. He'd compiled audio clips from Troy's YouTube business seminars and podcast interviews, feeding them into a program that could make Troy's digital voice say anything. "What are you doing?" I asked, alarmed. "Creating a fake investment pitch," Drew explained. "Under Dad's name. I'm going to send it to some of his contacts, the ones who already don't trust him much." "Drew, that sounds illegal." "It's not," he assured me. "It's just a simulation exercise. I'm not asking for money or making any transactions. Think of it as a digital wanted poster." I wasn't convinced, but I was starting to realize that Drew had developed a moral compass that, while unconventional, had its own internal logic. He wouldn't cross certain lines, but he'd go right up to the edge of them. The next day, I decided to visit Mr. Ellison, our former bank manager who had recently moved to a smaller branch across town. He'd known our family for years, had helped set up Drew's college fund, and had always been kind. His face fell when he saw me walk in. "Mrs. Walsh," he said, coming around his desk to greet me. "I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry." "Thank you," I said, taking the seat he offered. "I was hoping you might have some insight. Did Troy say anything unusual the last time you saw him? Any clues about what he was planning?" Mr. Ellison shifted uncomfortably. "I shouldn't really discuss another client's transactions." "Please," I said quietly. "He took our son's college fund. Drew's future." Something in my voice must have reached him, because he sighed and nodded. "He came in about 2 weeks ago. Not for the withdrawal, that was handled at another branch, but to ask about cryptocurrency options. He wanted to know how to convert large sums quickly, with minimal tracking." "And that didn't seem suspicious to you?" I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. It did, actually, Mr. Ellison admitted. He was rushing nervous, like someone on the run. I told him we don't provide crypto services and suggested more traditional investment options. He wasn't interested. He paused. If I had known what he was planning. It's okay, I said, though it wasn't. Nothing was okay. Thank you for telling me. When I got home, I found Drew triumphant. I found them, he announced as soon as I walked in. Dad used a cryptocurrency wallet to book a 5-star resort in Bali, under the name Bobby Freeman. Bobby Freeman? I repeated. The name sounded vaguely familiar. His high school nickname, Drew explained. He told me once about how he was the free man on the football team because he could always break loose from defenders. Another piece of Troy I'd never known. Another connection he'd shared with our son, but not with me. Drew showed me the resort's website, all infinity pools and ocean views, with rates that made my stomach clench thinking about Drew's stolen college fund paying for this luxury. How did you find this? I asked. I cross-referenced cryptocurrency transactions with Bali hotel bookings during the time frame they arrived, Drew said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for a middle schooler to be doing. Then I looked for names that might be Dad's aliases or connected to his past. That evening, Camille came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. She found me, and Drew huddled over his laptop. Please tell me you two are watching cat videos and not still obsessing over Troy, she said, setting down the food bags. We're tracking him, Drew said without looking up. Camille shot me a concerned look. Amelia, don't you think it might be time to let the authorities handle this? You could file charges for the theft. That's what I said. I admitted. But Drew thinks we need more evidence first. Not just evidence, Drew corrected. Leverage. Camille sat down across from us. Drew, honey, I know you're hurt and angry. We all are. But this surveillance operation you've got going, it's not healthy. Drew finally looked up, his expression unnervingly adult. What Dad did wasn't healthy either. He left us with nothing. I'm just trying to fix it. Camille looked like she wanted to argue but instead reached for the wine bottle. Later, after Drew had gone upstairs, she cornered me in the kitchen. This isn't normal, Amelia, she whispered fiercely. He's 12, for God's sake. He should be playing video games and complaining about homework, not tracking his father's cryptocurrency transactions. I know, I said, feeling the weight of my failure as a parent. But what am I supposed to do? He's the only one making any progress. The police said it's a civil matter since Troy had legal access to the account. And you should see him, Camille. He's focused, determined. It's giving him control in a situation where we both felt powerless. Camille's expression softened. Just don't let him lose his childhood over this. Troy's already taken enough. The next morning, I woke to find Drew already at work. He'd somehow gained access to Troy's smart home account, the system that controlled our lights, cameras, and security features. I got in through his email recovery option, Drew explained when I asked. He always uses the same security questions. First pet, Rusty. First car, Mustang. Childhood street, Maple Lane. What are you looking for? I asked, watching as he scrolled through data logs. Evidence, Drew said. And there it is. He clicked on a file, and suddenly our living room TV was showing security camera footage from 2 weeks ago. The timestamp read 1:17 a.m. The grainy night vision video showed Troy moving through our house, carefully packing a suitcase, occasionally glancing over his shoulder. He moved with purpose, with planning. He did this while we were sleeping, Drew said quietly. Every night for a week, he packed a little more. The betrayal felt fresh again, watching Troy methodically prepare to abandon us without a word of warning. In the footage, he paused by Drew's bedroom door, seemed to consider something, then continued down the hallway. He hadn't even said goodbye to his son. Drew's next target was Lana. He discovered a trove of deleted tweets and questionable brand collaborations, beauty products with dangerous ingredients, investment schemes that bordered on pyramid scams, even fake charity campaigns where most of the money went to administrative costs. They're both in deep, Drew told me, showing me screenshots. She's been involved in at least 3 lawsuits for misleading advertising. And look at this. He pointed to a series of DMs between Lana and another influencer, discussing how to avoid taxes on overseas income. They're perfect for each other, he added bitterly. By the end of the week, Drew had built what he called a decoy site, a fake real estate investment platform that looked remarkably professional. He sent the link to Troy through a spoofed email address that appeared to come from one of Troy's old business contacts. This will collect his IP address and browsing data, Drew explained. It won't harm his device or steal anything. It just helps us pinpoint exactly where he is. I was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with Drew's methods, but I couldn't deny their effectiveness. Within hours, Troy had clicked the link. Drew's tracking software immediately pinpointed his location. Lombok, Drew announced triumphantly. It's an island near Bali. They must have moved from the main resort. He looked up at me, a small, satisfied smile on his face. Now we wait. 2 weeks after Troy's disappearance, Drew's plan moved into what he called Phase 2. He created a fake venture capital group, complete with a professional website, LinkedIn profiles, and email domains, and reached out to Troy about a potential $1 million investment in his latest business idea. We need to draw him out, Drew explained as he drafted the email. Make him think there's a big opportunity, but one that requires full documentation and transparency. And you think he'll fall for that? I asked skeptically. Dad has 2 weaknesses, Drew said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Greed and vanity. He can't resist being told he's brilliant and deserves millions. There was a bitterness in his voice that broke my heart. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about a son coming to terms with his father's true character. Sure enough, Troy took the bait. Within hours, he'd responded enthusiastically to the fake VC group, attaching a hastily assembled business plan for a revolutionary wellness platform that would disrupt the health industry. Drew read it aloud, his tone dripping with disdain. Combining cutting-edge technology with holistic wellness practices, Wellness Wave will transform how people approach health in the digital age. It's all buzzwords. There's no actual product. That sounds like Troy, I said, remembering all the grand ventures that had come before. The smart home system that was neither smart nor home-based, the cryptocurrency for fitness enthusiasts that never launched, the meal planning app that was just a repackaged version of someone else's software. Drew's response to Troy was masterful, enthusiastic but demanding. The investment committee requires a full background check and documentation package before proceeding to the next stage, he wrote, attaching a link to what appeared to be a secure document portal. What does that link actually do? I asked nervously. It embeds tracking software, Drew said. Nothing illegal. It's the same kind of pixel tracking that marketing emails use, but more sophisticated. Troy, eager for the mythical $1 million investment, clicked immediately and unwittingly installed Drew's monitoring software. Just like that, my 12-year-old son had access to Troy's new email account, text messages, and browser history. I can see everything, Drew said, his eyes wide as data began flooding his screen. His emails to Lana, his conversations with local business contacts in Indonesia, his search history. He trailed off, scrolling through the information. He's looking up ways to extend his tourist visa. He's planning to stay there. Over the next few days, Drew monitored Troy's digital activities with an intensity that would have impressed federal agents. We learned that Troy and Lana were fighting. She was angry about being stuck in a middle-class resort instead of the 5-star property they'd started at. We discovered that Troy was running low on accessible cash. The bulk of the money, including Drew's college fund, was tied up in cryptocurrency wallets that were proving difficult to convert to cash in Indonesia. Most disturbing were the voice memos Troy sent to Lana, which Drew's software captured and played back for us. In one, Troy's voice, slightly slurred, as if he'd been drinking, said, "We need more time. That kid freaks me out. He's too smart for his own good. What if he figures something out?" Hearing Troy refer to Drew as that kid, instead of by name, sent a chill through me. Had he always seen his son as a potential threat rather than a child to love and protect? Drew's face remained impassive as he listened to his father's words, but I saw his hands clench into fists beneath the table. That night, while Drew was in the shower, I found myself drawn to a box of old journals I kept in my closet. Among them was one from the early years of my marriage to Troy, before Drew was born. I flipped through it, looking for, what? Some clue I'd missed? Some warning sign? And then I found it, an entry from 14 years ago, after a dinner with Troy's business partners. Troy said something strange tonight. We were discussing Paul's new baby, and Troy commented that children are tools. They either build your legacy or tear it down. When I asked what he meant, he laughed it off as a joke, but there was something cold in his eyes. It bothered me, but maybe I'm overthinking it. We're trying for a baby ourselves now, and sometimes I wonder if he wants it as much as I do. I felt physically ill reading those words. Had Troy always seen Drew as just another investment, another asset to be liquidated when convenient? I tore the page from the journal and burned it in the kitchen sink, watching the paper curl and blacken until Troy's words were nothing but ash. The next day brought a new development. Lana had done a morning live stream for her followers, showcasing her authentic Bali breakfast experience at what was clearly the hotel restaurant. As she panned her phone around, the camera briefly captured a notepad on the table beside her plate.
Drew froze the frame and zoomed in.
There, clearly visible, was a list that included my name and what appeared to be my account number. That's from our joint checking account, I said, recognizing the digits. The one I closed last week. They were planning to drain that one too, Drew said quietly. This wasn't impulsive, Mom. They've been planning this for months. The evidence was mounting, painting a picture of calculated betrayal that went beyond a simple affair or midlife crisis. Troy hadn't just left us. He'd conspired to systematically strip us of every financial resource before disappearing. Camille, who had been keeping a wary eye on our investigation, suggested it was time to go public. You have enough evidence now, she argued. File charges, contact the media. Let the world see what he did. Drew had a different approach. Using another burner email he'd created, he sent an anonymous tip to an investigative blogger known for exposing consumer scams and financial fraud. The tip included carefully selected screenshots of Troy's business dealings, Lana's questionable partnerships, and evidence linking them to similar scams in the past. Why a blogger? I asked. Why not go straight to the police? Because the police have jurisdictional limitations, Drew explained with the confidence of someone who'd spent hours researching international law. But public exposure travels anywhere. And Dad cares more about his reputation than anything else. Within days, the blog post went live. Serial entrepreneur or serial scammer. The double life of Troy Walsh. It detailed Troy's pattern of failed businesses, highlighted the suspicious timing of his departure from the country, and connected him to several investment schemes that had left others in financial ruin. It didn't mention Drew or me by name, referring only to abandoned family obligations, but the implication was clear. The post spread quickly, picked up by larger outlets, and shared across social media. Through his monitoring software, Drew watched as Troy discovered it on Reddit, then frantically began messaging Lana. Who exposed us? Troy's email shouted in all caps. This is going to ruin everything. My contacts are already asking questions. Lana's response was equally panicked. Delete everything. I'm already getting comments on my posts. This could destroy my brand deals. Drew's next move was his most technical yet. Using connections he'd made on programming forums, he filed reports with various cryptocurrency fraud divisions, triggering automatic security protocols that began flagging Troy's digital wallets. What exactly does that do? I asked as Drew submitted the final report. It puts a hold on his accounts, Drew explained. Not permanently, but long enough to cause problems. He won't be able to move the money easily. Is that legal? I was increasingly concerned about the line between justice and vengeance. It's what happens when suspicious activity is reported, Drew said with a shrug. The system is just working as designed. The effect was almost immediate. Troy's financial options began closing one by one. His credit cards were declined. His cryptocurrency wallets were flagged for review. His attempts to open new accounts were met with security challenges he couldn't easily overcome. And then, 3 weeks after he'd walked out of our lives, Troy called. The number showed up as unknown, but I knew instantly who it was when I answered. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "What did you two do to me?" he shouted, not bothering with the greeting. "I'm being locked out of everything." I glanced at Drew, who had gone completely still, his eyes wide. I put the phone on speaker. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Don't play dumb, Amelia. That blogger? The frozen accounts? The fraud alerts? This is Drew written all over it. What did you do, hack into my accounts? That's illegal, you know." Drew leaned forward slightly. "You taught me well," he said clearly. "I just took notes." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Troy's voice returned, lower now, more dangerous. "You little—" I ended the call before he could finish the insult, my hand shaking but my resolve stronger than ever. Troy had underestimated us both, had thought he could disappear with our money and face no consequences. He'd been wrong. Drew looked at me, a question in his eyes. "Now," I said, nodding. "Now we call Detective Tate." Detective Margot Tate wasn't what I expected. With her practical bob haircut and no-nonsense pantsuit, she looked more like an accountant than a detective. But her eyes, sharp and assessing, missed nothing as Drew methodically walked her through the evidence he'd gathered. "So let me get this straight," she said, tapping her pen against her notepad. "Your father emptied your college fund, fled the country with his girlfriend, and now you've what? Conducted your own international investigation?" Drew nodded, unfazed by her skepticism. "I tracked his digital footprint. Everything I did was legal." Detective Tate raised an eyebrow. "Including the tracking software?" "It's commercially available," Drew replied smoothly. "The same kind marketing companies use all the time." I watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and concern. My 12-year-old son was holding his own against a veteran detective, but there was something unsettling about how easily he navigated these adult waters. "And you're sure he's in Lombok?" Detective Tate asked, studying the map Drew had pulled up on his laptop. "He was as of yesterday morning," Drew confirmed. "They've moved from their original resort in Bali to a cheaper place in Lombok. They're running out of accessible cash." Detective Tate's expression remained neutral, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Not quite belief yet, but interest. "Show me the evidence about the fund transfer again," she requested. Drew pulled up the bank records, the transaction logs, the withdrawal confirmation showing Troy's signature. Next came the screenshots of Troy's recent emails, the voice memos to Lana, and finally, the damning image from Lana's live stream showing my account information. "That's a clear pattern of premeditated financial fraud," Drew said, sounding like he'd swallowed a legal textbook. "And since he transferred the money into cryptocurrency to avoid detection, that's wire fraud across international boundaries." Detective Tate was silent for a long moment, her eyes moving between the evidence on the screen and the serious face of the boy presenting it. Finally, she closed her notebook. "Mrs. Walsh," she said, turning to me, "I'll be honest. When you called about your husband taking your son's college fund, I thought this was just another messy divorce situation. But this," she gestured at Drew's laptop, "this is something else. Your son has built a better case than some of my colleagues." "So you'll help us?" I asked, hope rising for the first time in weeks. "I'll file the report today," she said. "But you should know that international cases are complicated. Indonesia has an extradition treaty with the U.S., but the process can be slow." "What about the money?"
Drew asked.
"Can we get it back?" Detective Tate's expression softened slightly. "We'll try. Cryptocurrency complicates things, but we have specialists who might be able to trace and freeze the transfers." After she left, promising to call with updates, Drew and I sat in silence at the kitchen table. The magnitude of what we'd just done, involving law enforcement, making the situation irrevocably official, settled over us. "Are you okay?" I asked Drew, reaching for his hand. He nodded, but his shoulders slumped slightly, the first sign of fatigue I'd seen since this began. "I just want it to be over." "It will be," I promised, though I had no way of knowing if that was true. The next morning, I received a call from Detective Tate. "Mrs. Walsh? I thought you'd want to know. We've filed for an international warrant. Because of the cryptocurrency angle, Interpol has gotten involved." They've flagged your husband's passport and known aliases. That's good. I wasn't sure how to feel. It's progress, she confirmed. The Indonesian authorities have agreed to cooperate. They take financial crimes seriously, especially when they involve foreign nationals potentially hiding assets in their country. I relayed this information to Drew, who nodded grimly. They're going to try to run, he predicted. Watch. Sure enough, within hours, Drew's monitoring software captured frantic messages between Troy and Lana. Their plan to transfer to Thailand was mentioned repeatedly, along with Lana's complaints about the nightmare situation and Troy's increasingly desperate attempts to access his frozen cryptocurrency. What we didn't anticipate was Lana's next move. That evening, she posted a cryptic Instagram story, a black background with white text reading, "Ladies, don't trust a man who runs from his own son." She followed it with a teary-eyed selfie captioned, "Some truths are coming to light. Stay tuned." She's turning on him, Drew said, watching the posts appear in real time. She knows they're trapped, and she's trying to save herself. Will it work? I asked. Drew shrugged. Depends on how much evidence she has against him versus how much he has against her. My guess? They're both going down. The next day, Camille called in a state of excitement. Have you seen the news? That blogger's story about Troy got picked up by the Channel 4 investigative team. They're running a segment tonight. I hadn't turned on the TV in weeks. It had felt too normal, too mundane for the crisis we were living through. But that evening, Drew and I sat together on the couch as the local news anchor introduced the story. 12-year-old outsmarts runaway father in $83,000 fraud case. The segment was brief, but powerful. They didn't name Drew directly, referring to him only as the minor child, but they detailed how a tech-savvy preteen had tracked his father across international borders after he absconded with a child's college fund. They showed redacted versions of Troy's transactions, blurred screenshots of his emails, and a photograph of the resort in Lombok where he and Lana were staying. That's going to make it hard for them to hide, Drew said with grim satisfaction. The story spread quickly. By the next morning, Drew's school principal had called, requesting a meeting. I went in prepared for the worst, criticism, maybe even disciplinary action for Drew's unorthodox activities. Instead, I found myself sitting across from a clearly uncomfortable man trying to navigate an unprecedented situation. Mrs. Walsh, Principal Harris began, "We've become aware of your family's situation." "Through the news," he added hastily. "I see," I said neutrally. "While the school does not condone unauthorized computer activities," he continued, "we also recognize that Drew was attempting to recover stolen funds. I'm concerned about how this publicity might affect him." "Drew is handling things remarkably well," I said, choosing my words carefully. "He didn't break any laws. He just stopped one from winning." Principal Harris nodded slowly. "That's a unique perspective. We want to support Drew during this difficult time. Perhaps some sessions with our school counselor?" I agreed, though I doubted Drew would open up to a stranger about what he was going through. My son had developed a protective shell that even I couldn't always penetrate. That afternoon, I received an unexpected email from a name I vaguely recognized, Jonathan Mercer, one of Troy's former business partners. The subject line read simply, "About Troy." The message was brief, but pointed. "Amelia, I saw the news about Troy. I want you to know that I warned him years ago about his business practices. He didn't listen. Your son just did what the courts never could. If you need a character witness or any documentation about Troy's past ventures, I have plenty. Sincerely, Jonathan Mercer." I forwarded the email to Detective Tate, adding another piece to the growing case against Troy. The climax came 3 days later. Drew and I were eating a quiet dinner when his laptop, perpetually open on the kitchen counter, pinged with an urgent alert. It was a news live stream from Bali. Local authorities, acting on an international warrant, had detained an American citizen attempting to board a flight to Bangkok, Thailand. The man, identified as Troy Walsh, is wanted in connection with financial fraud charges in the United States. The grainy footage showed Troy being led through the airport by Indonesian officials. He was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, a laughably inadequate disguise. He actually tried the sunglasses and cap trick, Drew said, shaking his head. Like that ever works outside of movies. I studied my son's face, searching for signs of how this moment was affecting him. Was there triumph? Relief? Sadness? His expression remained unreadable, his eyes fixed on the screen. Are you okay? I asked softly. Drew was silent for a long moment. I'm okay, he finally said. But I don't feel anything. Shouldn't I feel something? I put my arm around his shoulders, feeling the tension there. You might feel something later. Or you might not. There's no right way to react when your father betrays you like this. He nodded, still watching the screen where reporters were speculating about Troy's extradition timeline. The next day, Detective Tate called with good news. Our financial crimes unit, working with Indonesian authorities, has managed to trace and freeze most of the cryptocurrency transfers. It's complicated, but it looks like we can recover a significant portion of the college fund. How much? I asked, hardly daring to hope. Preliminary estimates suggest around 70,000 of the original 83,000. Some was already spent on resorts, flights, luxury purchases. We're still tracking down a few smaller transfers. I felt lightheaded with relief. Not everything, but enough. Enough to secure Drew's future, to undo the worst of Troy's damage. There's more, Detective Tate continued. The bank has offered to reinstate the fund under Drew's name only, with additional security measures. No one but Drew will be able to access it when he turns 18. When I shared this news with Drew, I expected celebration. Instead, he simply nodded and said, "Good. That's what we wanted." Then he closed his laptop for the first time in weeks. 2 days later, I received notification that Troy was being extradited to the United States. He would arrive the following week and be held pending trial. I had the option to visit him in custody. I debated whether to go. What was there to say to the man who had abandoned us, stolen from our son, and run away with another woman? What possible explanation could he offer that would make any of it understandable? In the end, I went, not for Troy, but for myself. For closure. The detention center was cold and sterile. Troy, stripped of his designer clothes and flashy accessories, looked smaller somehow. The confident entrepreneur was gone, replaced by a haggard man in a jumpsuit. "Amelia," he said when he saw me, a forced smile spreading across his face. "I knew you'd come. We need to talk about this misunderstanding." "This isn't the misunderstanding." I cut him off. "You stole our son's college fund and ran away with your girlfriend. That's not something anyone misunderstands." The smile faded. "It wasn't like that. I was protecting the money from bad investments. I was going to send it back once." "Stop lying," I said quietly. "It's over, Troy. They found the evidence.
They found the money.
They found you." His expression hardened. "Drew did this, didn't he? He's the one who tracked me down, who froze my accounts. How did he even know how to do that?" "You underestimated the wrong people, Troy," I said, standing up. "And I hope you never forget that." As I walked out, I felt a weight lifting. The weight of doubt, of wondering if I could have prevented this somehow, of questioning what I'd missed in our marriage. None of that mattered anymore. What mattered was moving forward, rebuilding our lives without the shadow of Troy hanging over us. I never understood the term media circus until one materialized on my front lawn. After Troy's arrest made national news, reporters descended on our quiet neighborhood, all vying for interviews with the hacker kid and his mother. "Mom, there's a news van outside," Drew informed me casually one morning, peering through the blinds. "Actually, there are 3. I joined him at the window, watching journalists with microphones checking their hair in car mirrors. "Don't talk to any of them," I instructed. "Not a word." My phone was equally besieged. Calls from morning shows, requests from podcasters, even inquiries from book publishers asking if we'd consider telling our inspirational story. I declined them all. Camille, however, found the whole situation darkly amusing. "Guess you're the mom of a genius now," she joked when she visited, slipping past the reporters with takeout and wine. "Who knew your quiet librarian life would end up as headline news?" The headline that had caught fire was particularly sensational. 12-year-old exposes father in elaborate financial sting. The story had all the elements people loved: betrayal, technology, a child outsmarting an adult, justice served. It was catnip for a public hungry for modern-day David and Goliath stories. But Drew didn't share the public's enthusiasm for his newfound fame. He skipped school for several days, claiming a stomach bug that we both knew was fictitious. Instead, he stayed in his room, door closed, headphones on, tinkering with coding projects that had nothing to do with tracking his father. "I just want it all to go away," he told me quietly one evening when I brought him dinner. He hadn't touched the plate I'd left at lunch. "Everyone at school will know. They'll ask questions. They'll think I'm weird." "You're not weird," I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. "You're extraordinary. But I understand not wanting the attention." He nodded, pushing his food around the plate. "It feels like what happened is the only thing about me that matters now. Like I'll always be that kid whose dad stole his money." My heart ached for him. At 12, identity is fragile enough without having yours defined by a public scandal. "This will fade," I promised. "Something else will capture everyone's attention. And you get to decide who you are, Drew. No one else." A local news station was particularly persistent, offering to do an exclusive profile. When they called for the 5th time, I finally agreed, but with strict conditions. "My son's face will not be shown," I said firmly. "No identifying details about him. No footage of our home. And I approve all questions in advance." The producer reluctantly agreed, and so I found myself sitting in a darkened studio, bright lights in my face, trying to answer questions about the most painful experience of our lives without breaking down on camera. "What went through your mind when you realized your husband had taken your son's college fund?" the interviewer asked, her expression a practiced mixture of concern and curiosity. "Disbelief," I answered honestly. "Then anger. Then determination. He's still a kid," I added firmly. "He shouldn't have had to protect his own future from his father." The segment aired the following week, generating another wave of attention. Most reactions were supportive, but online forums and talk shows began debating whether Drew had gone too far in his methods. Was it appropriate for a child to hack into his father's accounts, even if the goal was to recover stolen money? Had I, as his mother, encouraged inappropriate behavior? "They're acting like I'm some kind of criminal," Drew said bitterly, scrolling through comments on a news site. "Dad's the one who stole $83,000. "People love to judge situations they know nothing about," I told him, gently closing his laptop. "Their opinions don't matter." While public debate about our situation swirled, Lana made her own bid for sympathy. She released a 17-minute video on her Instagram, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face as she claimed ignorance of Troy's plans. "I had no idea about the college fund," she sobbed into the camera. "Troy told me the money was from his business ventures. I would never have knowingly participated in stealing from a child." Drew and I watched the video together in silent disbelief. When it finally ended, he let out a soft snort. "She's lying." She opened the second cryptocurrency wallet herself. I saw the verification email. "Of course she's lying," I agreed. "But people will believe what they want to believe." The following day, we had an unexpected visitor. Detective Tate arrived at our door, not in her usual professional attire but in jeans and a casual blazer. "It's unofficial," she explained when I invited her in. "I'm not here in an official capacity." Drew, hearing her voice, emerged from his room for the first time that day. "I wanted to let you know," Detective Tate said, addressing him directly, "that we traced your father's dummy accounts using the data you provided. Your information helped build the entire case." Drew nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. "There's something else," she continued, reaching into her bag and pulling out a sealed envelope. "This is for you." Drew took it cautiously. "What is it?" "An invitation," Detective Tate said. "From the cybersecurity division of a certain government agency. They were impressed by your skills. It's an offer to intern with them when you turn 16. Drew's eyes widened as he tore open the envelope and scanned the letter inside. For the first time in weeks, I saw genuine excitement on his face. "Is this real?" he asked, looking up at Detective Tate. She nodded. Very real. What you did, while unorthodox, showed remarkable aptitude. They're always looking for that kind of talent. After she left, Drew seemed lighter somehow, as if the letter had given him a glimpse of a future beyond our current troubles. Eventually, Drew had to return to school. I offered to homeschool him until the attention died down, but he refused. I can't hide forever, he said, though his expression suggested he'd like to try. His return was as difficult as we'd feared. Teachers pulled him aside to awkwardly congratulate him. Students whispered as he passed in the hallways. One boy, Parker Wilson, a known troublemaker, took particular delight in Drew's discomfort. "Oh, look, it's the hacker kid," Parker announced loudly in the cafeteria. "Going to steal my lunch money too?" Drew ignored him, sitting alone at a corner table. "What's wrong? Too good to talk to normal people now that you're famous?" Parker persisted, following him. Drew continued eating in silence. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Parker shoved Drew's shoulder, causing him to spill his milk. Drew looked up then, his expression unnervingly calm. "You should check your Wi-Fi names at home," he said quietly. Parker backed away, confusion and a hint of fear crossing his face. When Drew told me about the encounter that evening, I was concerned. "What did you mean about his Wi-Fi names?" Drew shrugged. "Nothing. I don't know anything about his home network. But he doesn't know that." I wasn't sure whether to be relieved or worried by this new strategy. The legal proceedings against Troy moved forward. Because he was being held across the state, his initial hearings were conducted via satellite. Drew and I watched from the back of the courtroom as Troy appeared on a large screen, looking disheveled but still somehow managing to project indignation rather than remorse. I was protecting the money from bad investments, he claimed when questioned about his actions. Amelia has never understood finance. She would have wasted it on risky stocks or let the bank take half in fees. When that defense failed to gain traction, he tried a new angle. Drew has always been difficult, manipulative. He's turning my wife against me. This whole situation is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by an angry child. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, was having none of it. "Sir," she interrupted, "your son ran circles around you and didn't steal a dime. I suggest you reconsider your defense strategy." A week later, a letter arrived from the detention center, Troy's handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me tear it open. "Amelia,
You turned my own son against me.
you poisoned him with your paranoia and your smothering. You'll regret this when he grows up and leaves you behind too. He's more like me than you know, calculating, strategic. The difference is, I would have taught him to use those skills for success, not revenge."
Troy.
I tore the letter into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet, determined that Drew would never see those toxic words. But I underestimated him, as Troy had. That evening, I found him in his room, the reconstructed letter spread out on his desk like a puzzle. "I found the pieces in the trash," he explained, not looking up. I wanted to know what he said. "Drew, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to see that." "It's okay," he said, though his voice suggested otherwise. "It doesn't matter what he thinks anymore." That night, long after Drew had gone to bed, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring into the darkness. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, joining him. He shook his head. "Mom, was I wrong to do what I did? All the tracking and the fake websites and everything." The question caught me off guard. After weeks of justifying our actions to others, I hadn't expected Drew to question them himself. I knelt beside his chair, so we were at eye level. "You protected what your father threw away. That's not wrong. It's brave." He considered this, his young face serious in the dim light from the stove hood. "I don't want this to be my whole story. I don't want to be known for this forever." "It won't be," I promised. "This is just one chapter. I want to build something good," he continued, his voice stronger now. "Like really good. Not just traps and tracking software." I smiled, feeling hope for the first time in months. "Then let's start with a blank page." Spring arrived with a gentle persistence, coaxing green from the winter-bare trees and bringing with it a sense of renewal that seemed almost too perfect a metaphor for our lives. The media circus had finally moved on to fresher scandals, leaving our front yard to the squirrels and occasional delivery person. Our first order of business was securing Drew's future. With Detective Tate's help, we met with First National Bank to re-establish the college fund. Mr. Ellison had personally requested to handle the case, his way of making amends for not recognizing the warning signs in Troy's behavior. "We'd like to set up a new trust," I explained. "In Drew's name only, with multiple security levels." Mr. Ellison nodded, his expression solemn. "Absolutely, Mrs. Walsh. We've already prepared the paperwork." He slid a folder across his desk. "The recovered funds, $72,814, to be precise, will be placed in a high-yield account accessible only upon Drew's 18th birthday or for verified educational expenses." "I want to program the security alerts myself," Drew interjected. "No offense, but your current system has weaknesses." Mr. Ellison blinked in surprise. "That's not usually." "Please," I said. "After what we've been through, the extra security would help us both sleep better." The banker hesitated, then nodded. "I'll need to get approval from our VP, but I don't see why not." An hour later, Drew was sitting with the bank's vice president of digital security, walking her through a series of modifications to their alert system. The woman, a former software engineer with 20 years' experience, watched in barely concealed awe. "I've never seen a 12-year-old do that," she murmured to me as Drew demonstrated how to close a vulnerability in their two-factor authentication process. "Has he considered a career in cybersecurity?" "He's keeping his options open," I replied with a small smile. With Drew's future secured, I turned my attention to our present circumstances. The publicity surrounding Troy's arrest had created an unexpected opportunity. The Public Library Board, impressed by my grace under pressure, their words, and community advocacy, offered me a director-level position at a larger branch in the city center, a significant promotion from my previous role. "Look at you. Revenge and a raise," Camille joked when I told her the news over coffee. "Seriously, though, I'm proud of you, Amelia. Most people would have crumbled under half of what you've dealt with." "I didn't have that luxury," I said, stirring my latte. Drew needed me to stay standing. As our lives gradually regained a sense of normalcy, we heard less and less about Lana. Her tearful video had failed to generate the sympathy she'd hoped for, especially after financial investigators uncovered her active role in managing the stolen funds. Her sponsors dropped her one by one, her follower count plummeted, and eventually, her accounts went dark entirely. "Rumors online say she fled to Eastern Europe," Camille reported after falling down what she called a social media rabbit hole one evening. "Apparently, she has connections in Prague." I found I didn't care anymore. "Some people vanish to avoid consequences," I told Drew when he asked about her disappearance. You stood up to them." Troy's case proceeded through the legal system with the grinding slowness of justice. 6 months after his arrest, he was finally sentenced, 6 years in prison for wire fraud, identity manipulation, and obstruction of justice. Drew and I attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the back row as the judge delivered her verdict. "The court finds you to be a danger to your own family's security," she stated, looking at Troy over her reading glasses. "Your actions were not those of a desperate man in a temporary crisis, but of a calculating individual who prioritized his own desires over his child's future." Troy's gaze found us in the courtroom. He stared at me with naked hatred, then shifted his eyes to Drew, a mixture of anger and something else. Something almost like fear. Drew leaned over to me and whispered, "He's not even worth our silence anymore." As we walked out of the courthouse, a reporter thrust a microphone toward Drew. "How do you feel about your father's sentence?" she asked eagerly. Drew didn't break stride. "I have no comment," he said, his voice steady. "And I have no father." At school, Drew was finding his footing again. The whispers had mostly stopped, and Parker Wilson had moved on to other targets after Drew's cryptic comment about Wi-Fi networks. Drew's computer science teacher, recognizing his extraordinary abilities, asked him to give a presentation to the class. "They want me to talk about how I built a cyber trap," Drew told me, rolling his eyes. Like I'm some kind of vigilante hacker. You don't have to do it, I assured him. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Actually, I think I will. But not about trapping Dad. I want to talk about ethical tech and safeguarding families instead. The presentation was a success. Drew spoke with a confidence that belied his age, explaining complex security concepts in terms his classmates could understand, and emphasizing the importance of using technology ethically. The most powerful tools can be used to build or to break, he concluded. The choice is always yours. His teacher was moved to tears. Your son has a gift, she told me afterward. Not just with computers, but with communication. He took something painful and turned it into something instructive. To celebrate Drew's presentation and my promotion, Camille organized what she called a new beginning party at our house. Nothing elaborate, just a few close friends, neighbors, and even Mr. Ellison from the bank. There was cake and laughter, two things that had been in short supply in our home for months. I watched Drew from across the room as he explained something about coding to Mr. Ellison's teenage son. He was smiling, really smiling, his hands animated as he talked. In that moment, he looked like any other 12-year-old boy, enthusiastic about his interests, unshadowed by betrayal. Later that week, I found Drew sitting at his computer, typing intently. I assumed he was working on a new project until I glimpsed the words, "Dear Dad," at the top of the document. I retreated quietly, giving him privacy. Hours later, when he'd gone outside to shoot hoops in the driveway, curiosity got the better of me. I peeked at his computer, but the document was gone. Whatever he'd written to Troy, he'd deleted it without sending it. Through the window, I watched my son playing basketball alone, practicing layups with intense concentration. I slipped outside and waited until he noticed me. Mind if I join? I asked. He shrugged, bouncing the ball to me. I caught it, lined up, and sank a perfect shot. Still got it. I grinned, surprising even myself. Drew laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that I hadn't heard in far too long. Okay, rematch, he challenged. First to 5. We played until dusk, neither of us mentioning Troy or the deleted letter or the months of trauma we'd endured. We were just a mother and son, playing basketball on a spring evening, trash-talking each other's shots and keeping score. The next day, I enrolled in an online course on digital security. If I'm going to be the mother of a future cybersecurity expert, I should at least understand the basics, I explained when Drew caught me studying. I can help you with the assignments, he offered, pulling up a chair beside me. That conversation sparked an idea. 2 weeks later, we launched a podcast together, Bite Back, Stories from the Firewall. Each episode featured tales of digital security breaches, identity theft prevention tips, and interviews with experts in the field. Drew handled the technical aspects, while I managed the storytelling and guest coordination. It wasn't an overnight sensation, but we gradually built a small, dedicated audience of tech enthusiasts and concerned parents. More importantly, it gave Drew a positive outlet for his talents and a way to reclaim his narrative. One evening, after recording our 10th episode, Drew asked me a question that caught me off guard. Do you think we'll ever be completely normal again? I considered this carefully. I'm not sure normal is what we should aim for, I finally said. Maybe whole is a better goal. And yes, I think we're getting there. He nodded thoughtfully. I think so too. As summer approached, bringing with it Drew's 13th birthday, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey we'd taken. In less than a year, we'd experienced betrayal, loss, justice, and renewal. We'd been broken and had rebuilt ourselves stronger than before. Troy had thought he could take everything from us and disappear. But he didn't realize that he left behind something stronger than money. He left behind a son who was smarter than him, and a mother who never stopped believing that someday they'd be okay. As it turned out, someday had arrived sooner than either of us expected. If this story of a mother and son's determination moved you, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more tales of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges.